What's up, everybody? I'm Dave Miranda, and this is episode 108 of Just Give Me 5. I hope you guys are doing great. Continue to be amazing. We got a really awesome show lined up for you today. But first, I need you to hit that like button. I need you to hit that subscribe, and I need you to spread the word about Just Give Me 5, all right? All right. Now, if you guys caught episode 107, you saw we had none other than the one and only DJ Javen. And let me tell you, man, that girl is so dope. You know, and it's just so amazing to see, you know, everything that she's been doing throughout her journey, and it's all well, like all the accolades, you know, all the praise, you know, everything that she's getting, she's doing the work. It's all well deserved, man. You know, just the girl has such a humbled spirit, a beautiful soul, and we were just so happy to have her on the show. You know, I checked her out on, you know, on Sirius XM on Pitbull's Globalization station, and man, she just, you know, bodies it. You know, and just can't thank her enough, man. That was a really awesome episode, and make sure you guys watch episode 107. All right. But today's guest is by far one of the OGs of not only the DJ community, the hip hop community, but just the entertainment community, period, in Arizona. We're going to talk about how he became a DJ. We're also going to talk about his time working in street promotions and with some legendary artists. We're going to talk about how he got into graphic design work and some amazing flyers he's done for people, some memorable stories, and so much more. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I present to you MeanMugg.
Yo, what up? My name is Sean, aka MeanMugg, aka Biggie. And all I'm saying is just give me 5. Who inspired me to become a DJ? I was thinking about this earlier. I think when I was, it's hard, man, because thinking back to all, like, when I first got started. So I think probably 12, 13, I moved to Glendale after moving from Maryvale. And, I wanted to DJ because I seen like Jam Master Jay and like, you know, I think Premier was like one of the bigger ones, just the way he used to cut and all the songs, like and all the Gangstar songs and everything. That's what turned me on. Like, yo, I want to do that. I want to be that part of like hip hop. You know what I mean? And so I remember going to like a thrift store and grabbing like a direct drive Technique that was like 1100 or whatever, and we got that. And then I think I bought like a Gemini and a Gemini mixer and a Gemini turntable that was like a belt driven, so I could only scratch on the right side. So I got real good on the right side. Okay. You know what I mean? And so when I did that, like I started buying records. I think I went to Tower Records for the first time in like Tempe to buy like Bangin' on Wax. I think was my first record ever. Was Bangin' on Wax, was like the red record and the Pyru Love and Steady Dippin'. You know what I mean? So like I was like, yeah, this is it. And then I think I forgot what else I bought. I bought a couple other things like some Too Short or something like that. But it, you know, I just kind of started like digging in just so I could play some stuff. And then I started going through, like my mom had records and she was like really into like butt rock and like old school, like oldie rock, you know, like Bon Jovi and Def Leppard and all that type of stuff. And I think the time I started like listening to a lot of music, right? And this is actually a crazy story. I always forget to talk about this. I had met, it was still in elementary school, and I had a friend during the summer. She was teaching at the school as a recreation teacher. And she used to come over and hang out and try to hook up with my homie. And she gave me a mixtape. Okay. And we used to like drink 40s. She used to buy 40s for us and shit. You know what I mean? Yeah, right. And like, you know, we'd be drinking Mickey's at the park and shit. Yeah. And like, she gave me a mixtape. She's like, you should listen to my friend. I went to school with him. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, he's a DJ? And she's like, yeah, he's really good. So I dubbed it, right? And I started listening to it. And it was like a whole bunch of like rock and hip hop mashed up, right? It was like Diggable Planets mashed into like Def Leppard or Poison or, you know, just the Beatles or whatever, you know what I mean? Just into like hip hop, like recent hip hop at that time. And then there was a break at the end of the tape, just like every old school mixtape, right? That was like, yo, what's up? This is Z-Trip. This is going out to my homegirl Amber, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, who is this dude? Like, this is really dope. Like, he's doing a lot different than everybody else. You know what I mean? So that's what kind of made me like really go, okay, well, like I was brought up on like old rock and like my grandparents listened to like easy listening, like Frank Sinatra and, you know, like all the, like the, just the old, like real chill stuff. Yeah. 50s, 60s stuff. And, but I liked hip hop, you know, like I think my first tape was like Rob Bass and Easy Rock, you know, Joy and Pain and like, and It Takes Two. And like, I think the craziest tape I got was like the Blue Too Short tape.
Life is Too Short.
Life is Too Short. Yeah. I always forget the names of the actual albums, but, so after that, like I really got into it and that's all I listened to, right? Just hip hop, hip hop, hip hop.
Yeah.
And I was like super like, for a long time I was like real West Coast and then I got real East Coast because it was more like scientifical, mathematical and like, you know, just more of a vibe, I guess. So when I was going to like elementary school, I had gotten kicked out of junior high. I was like the first person to go to jail in junior high and get kicked out of junior high in Glendale. And I went to a middle school, and during the middle school, I would walk to school every day and listen to like the Old Dirty Bastard album or like the Enter the Wu-Tang or Enter the 36 Chambers, you know what I mean, and shit like that at the time. And like it was just back to back. I flipped the tape, let's listen, and I would listen to that Z-Trip tape. And at the time, I was starting to do graffiti, was writing on a lot of stuff every time because I had to walk pretty far to go to school. The thing is, though, if I didn't show up to school, I would go to jail, like permanently, until I was 18. So it was like, it was that or nothing. And so I had to walk, it sucked. But in our reality, like that was actually a good school for me. I did actually really good in school at that time. I learned a lot about like morals and stuff. But finishing that school, going into high school, I had an opportunity to do a magnet program for graphic design. And so I went to that. It was at South Mountain. So I was living in Glendale, and they would send a bus to go to South Mountain every day.
Say North High, 'cause North High.
Nah. And so at the time, everybody's like, yo, you don't want to do that, right? And I'm like, why? Like, what's going on? They're like, yo, there's like race wars going on. There's riots every day. You know what I mean? And I'm like, yo, but like, I'm up here. Like, we deal with that shit all the time. There's drive-bys, all kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So it wasn't a big deal. Like, I was a little nervous because I was out of my neighborhood. You know what I mean? I didn't know anybody else down there. So I went for like, half a year, and there was a couple riots. And it was pretty wild. And I ended up just saying, you know what? Like, I met a couple friends that were graffiti artists at the time, and they were like, yo, you should go to jams, right? Instead of like taking the bus home, you should go to jams. And there's a hip hop shop on Central. So I'm like, okay. Let me go check it out, right? And so I would go in, and they had tips, and they had like streakers and, you know, hip hop mags. They didn't have a lot of stuff, but it was cool. Like they had some records, and there was a dude named Pyro that worked there. I think it was like, his name was like Robert Apodaca, right? And he worked there for like the whole time for the most part. And he was like, hey, I got some records for sale. And I'm like, word, okay. Like, well, how much you want to sell them for? He's like, yo, give me like $50 and I'll give you 2 crates. All right. So that's when I really started like, okay, I'm gonna do this, right?
Now you're invested.
And mainly because I had to take the bus from the south side all the way back up to Glendale, right? And I had to carry 2 crates of records in my limp ass arms, right?
Right.
Like waiting at the bus, you know, and like,
Good forearm workout.
bruh, and then sitting on the bus, like with these crates, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like late night, and like I remember finally getting home, and like my arms were just sore as hell, and I didn't even know what I bought. Like I started going through them, and there was like a whole bunch of like Thump compilations, that had all the old school shit, which were actually really dope because they were like clear records, and there was just a whole bunch of old school stuff. There was some hip hop, there was some freestyle in there, like some Debbie Deb and stuff like that. so Sheila E. and yeah, so Stevie B. And it was a lot of compilation stuff, so I actually, it was cool because it had a lot of music all on one record, right? So I was excited, like, yo, I could rock a party to this, you know? And so at the time, I was kind of doing a little bit of both, graffiti and DJing. I went, like, right after that, I ended up stopped going to South Mountain, and I started going to Alhambra, and I was technically supposed to go to Alhambra at the time. And my homie Daz went there, which is still a good friend of mine to this day. And he was a b-boy, and we would always ditch, and we would have little house parties, and I would DJ at the house parties. And I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. You know, I would just play, and, you know, people would be drinking 40s and having fun and you know, smoking or whatever. And they were breakdancing and shit. So I was like, yo, like, maybe this is what I can do, right? I could play for the dancers. And so I started like DJing for a couple little house parties and whatnot, and then people started paying me a little bit of money. And then it's such a weird like time frame, but like and especially now that I'm so old, like it's hard to think back to like that at that time. But so in the midst of all that, I had met a couple friends that were graffiti artists that I went to school with. And we went out one night, and we went bombing till like 6 a.m. And we didn't stop. We could have stopped at midnight, and we actually went to AutoZone, the 24-hour AutoZone, and picked up more paint. After bombing all night. We hit rooftops, we hit like billboards. My ass ain't climbing up on a billboard. It was my boy who like, I'll hit you up there, you know, cool, I'll watch out, you know what I mean? But we wrecked some shit that night. And so about 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, we're about to be done. We had parked the car kind of far away. We're walking back, and I got busted. Oh, wow. Ghetto bird, everything. You know what I mean? We got busted. They put guns on us, like, don't move, you know what I mean? And I had all the paint, everything on me, you know what I mean? Yeah. And we were wrecking like walls all the way by Metro Center. Okay. Yeah, and so we went to jail, right? Yeah. And I got out like the next day, and I'm like, yo, I'm good. So at the time, like the week before, Ohio passed a law that if you got caught doing graffiti, it was mandatory 250 community hours, which is craziness, right? 250 community hours is long fucking time. Hell yeah. You know what I mean? $10,000 restitution, which is crazy for a 16-year-old kid, right? Yeah, yeah. And then I got my license suspended. Okay. And I never even had my license yet. So I couldn't get my license until I was like 18, technically, because I could have got it when I was 16. Right. So I was like, oh, what am I going to do? You know, like, so I started having to pay for probation. I was on task. I had to do the community service. And my friend was like, yo, go down to this church on Indian School and Clarendon. It was like south of Thomas, right? Yeah. In Maryville. And he's like, yo, they got like a hip hop, like a youth thing over there. And if you go, you might be able to do some community service if you just go hang out, you know? Right. So I came in, they're like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, I DJ, I do graffiti and whatnot. And they're like, okay, well, we have some graffiti artists that work, that are pastors here, or that are like youth pastors here. And I'm like, okay. They're like, oh, so you DJ? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, we have a b-boy crew too that we do on our youth nights. So if you want to DJ, like, we'll take your hours off. Oh, nice. And I'm like, word? Oh, right, okay. Right. Like, yeah. Okay, cool, right? So that was I think, to be honest, man, like that was really a pinnacle in my life, because it was a fucked up time, right? Where I was like worried about like, yo, if I'm gonna pass this piss test or not and go to jail for real, you know what I mean? Or am I gonna be able to kill these community hours, or am I gonna fuck up? You know what I mean? But I got more into it, and we started doing more and more like youth outreaches is what they called it, right, at the time. And they did like a play too. It was like a hood ass like a play. So it was like some gangsters, and like, they teach people how to stay off drugs, and it was a whole on like drama, right, is what they called it. And I was like in their magazine and all kind of shit. I was in the drama, and they just took my hours off like gradually. And at the time, that's when I met Ali, right, the spaceship thief, right? He was doing community hours the same time I was doing community hours. We met like in the church, like at the service. He's like, yo, he's doing community hours, you're doing community hours, hang out. Like you guys live in the same neighborhood, you know? And so like that's when we first started hanging out. And as time went on, it just got crazy. Like we started traveling and doing shows like in other states and other counties. We would go to Globe, we would go to Tucson, we go, you know, Coolidge, just random places to go do the drama. And it was like a full-on thing. So like they had rappers that were like Christian rappers, right? And then they had the drama that was like a Christian drama. And then I would DJ for the B-Boys, and the B-Boys would come out. And so that actually blossomed into from G City into the Arizona Floor Assassins, right? So I was like the unofficial official DJ for the Arizona Floor Assassins. So anytime we had a battle at the church or anywhere else, like, and like, you know, we were battling Furious Styles and like Motor City and Tempe Bronx, you know what I mean? You know, shit like that. And so that's how I got to know like all those kind of dudes, you know, and whether it was beef, because we all had like an underlaying kind of like, you know, fuck your crew and, you know, it was just, yeah. I didn't mean, that's what it was like on the floor, you know what I mean? But at the time, like, it was hard because like hip hop was supposed to be about love and unity and shit, right? And it wasn't, bro. Like it was a lot of, every time we would battle, like it would be a fight, you know what I mean? Or somebody would start shooting, even if we were at the church, bro. It was crazy. And so the cool thing about the church too was they were the only church that had a graffiti wall that was open to the public, and it was a big ass wall that just went down like right off off of 43rd. It was south of Indian School, right? Yeah, Clarendon. But yeah, it was this huge wall, and you could go and do whatever you want on it. And Caper was in charge of it, and he was a pastor there. Well, he wasn't a pastor technically; he was a youth pastor at the time. And then I met him, and we started. He kind of like took me under his wing, and he DJ'd a little bit, and he started. He's like, man, you don't want to do that graffiti shit. You want to learn how to do like piecing and like doing like murals and like doing like real letters type style stuff. You know what I mean? And so he started like kind of take me under his wing and like take me everywhere he went, and started teaching me how to like be a better graffiti artist. And so at the time, like it was just like this big conglomerate of like the dancers, the b-boys, the graffiti artists, and then going out to the wall like every day and either practicing and then meeting other people that would come to the wall, because that was the only place that people could really go like practice or legally go do graffiti, right? And so at that time I met like Mac, right? La Locota, like all the NG crew pretty much, you know, like Mondo, Feist, and dude, just everybody. Like anybody you could think of, a lot of the Bode crew, like all the Southside cats. I mean, so many graffiti artists that like were just come to this wall, 21 Rack. And then people would come from out of town to come hit that wall. So you meet a lot of people that were just like, oh, okay, what's up? I seen your shit like on a train or whatever, you know? And actually that turned into like me and Caper like taking the fucking, the church van and was like, yeah, man, like back in the day, like I used to hit trains, like, you know, in the 80s. And he's like, you want to go hit some trains? And I'm like, all right. You know, he's like, I got some paint, you know, let's go. And so we went to the Glendale yard, which was like off of like 51st or 59th and Grand, right? And so we hit the Glendale yard, and I remember just being scared as hell, bro. Like pitch dark, you're like the trains are making noises and you're jumping over shit, and there's just grease everywhere. And I mean, there's tons of stories I can say about that, but I remember like going like for the first time with Pablo or Caper, and him going like, yeah, man, I haven't been in so long, like this is crazy. And I remember him being scared a little bit and me being terrified. Right. And so we got there, and he's like, yo, watch out. And he started doing a piece, and then I started just writing on shit. And like since after that, like weeks and weeks after that, we would go every weekend, like probably every 3 days, every 4 days most of the time. Every time we would drop everybody off in the van after church, we would go hit the fucking train yard. Right. So that kind of put me on to like a whole nother level of graffiti at the time. And then as I was DJing, like I started getting a little bit more hype on it, and I was like, yo, this is fun. Like I want to start DJing like more like b-boy shows, and that's when I started seeing people like Mello, and they were DJing a lot of stuff for like the Fury Styles, and like then there was like rappers and whatnot. And I started doing graphics because one of the dudes at the church, his name was Foofy, Raymond Nunez at the time. Pretty famous, man. Like he's the one that did the first Lost in Love album cover for MC Magic, and he did the first MBK cover for Nasty Boy Click with like the little Suzuki Samurai on the front. And he was there, and me and him kind of started clicking on like art, and I had a computer at the house, so he was like, you know, you should start doing graphics. So getting into graphics, it was a weird situation. I started learning, I started playing around on the computer, and just doing like random shit. I downloaded Photoshop, like a bootleg version of Photoshop. I think I started like with 3.0 for the nerds, like you know what I'm talking about. And I was just messing around, just doing stuff, and like I think I made like the first mixtape cover for myself, right? And it was like Biggie's like hip hop mix or some shit, right? And at the time too, there was this app called Bryce 3D, and you could do like these really cool like 3D like morphs and like landscapes and shit. And I remember doing that, and it was the text in 3D, and I was like, yo, this is dope, like it's really fun. And I showed my boy, and he was like, yo, like you got something, like let me show you some stuff. And so I would like go back and forth with him at the church when he was working on like the magazines and stuff like that for the church. I'll be like, yo, so how do you select this, or how did you do this, or how did you cut this out? And he'd be like, yeah, you do it like this. And I would go home and try it. And then at the time, like, it was weird because, you know, nobody had no like cell phones or nothing. So you had to call the house phone and, yo, man, I forgot what you told me about this. You know what I mean? So, and so I just kept messing around with it. And then Caper, Pablo, he started the crew, NG, Nitty Gritty. And so when that happened, Pablo was like, I don't know if he was living with me at the time, because he did live with me for about a year. And he was like, hey, you're getting pretty good at this graphic shit. Like I seen the little album cover or the little mixtape cover you did. You want to do the Nitty Gritty show flyer? And I'm like, I mean, I try, you know what I mean? Like, sure, you know? And he was like, yo, do it. He's like, I'll do the front. It's going to be like, I'll just design it like graffiti style. And then him and Lalo, I forget who did the first one. I think it was just him, or just him and Lalo did it. Okay. And then he was like, I need you to do the back with all the artists and the people that are performing. So it was like C-3PO, some of the Bomb Shelter DJs. I don't think it was Z-Trip, but I think maybe Radar was there. Okay. Drunken Immortals, I think, played. It was a lot of really like OG like groups, you know? And I remember doing it, and he was like, yo, here's $40. Okay. And so that's when it clicked, right? Like, okay, I can make money doing this shit. You know what I mean? Sure. And so I was like, okay, like, let me get this out. And so they you know, they put up a bunch of flyers out, and they, you know, they pushed it out, and it was an awesome show. It was a dope show. It was a good turnout. I think Quetzal played that one. If it might have not been the first one, it was the second one. Okay. And it was at a spot called Tonetera over here on 7th Street. Oh, and I remember that. Yeah. And so that was dope, man. And I remember like a couple other people started saying like, yo, like, can you make me a flyer for this house party? Can you make me a flyer for this? And so $20, $40, you know? Yeah, man. And at the time, like, I was spending tons of time on these flyers because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. Yeah. So I spent like 2 or 3 days, you know? Right. But the good thing was they were getting printed, and they were like, I learned from Foofy or Ray that you had to put your name on the flyer and your phone number. Yeah. So like I had my house phone number on the fucking flyer. Right. You know what I'm saying? Right. And like people were calling my house. My mom was answering and shit. Like, that's what it was. Yo, I'm looking for Biggie's graphics. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know? Right. Yeah. So I was like, hold on, you know, and like, Sean, get the phone. Somebody's calling for, you know. But so yeah, I did a lot of like, you know, just house party flyers and stuff like that in the beginning. And And then I kind of got into like doing more graphic design for websites, right? Yeah. And at the time, this is the crazy story too, which goes hand in hand with the graphics, right? I wanted to learn how to build a website. At the time, you could a .com cost like $500 a month or $300 a month, right? So I went to this place called GoodNet. It was over on Osborne in that big 15-story building that looks like little lines in it down the side. It looks like it would sing a song to you if you like played it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was like on the 14th floor. You had to go pay them like in person, and then you had like GoodNet / like I called it. I think it was like Hip Hop 7, right? It was like the Inye and then Hip Hop 7, right? So I started putting that on everything, and I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, man. And like, I was designing this website, and I said, well, what am I gonna do? And so I was like, well, I'll just do it on my people, like all my people, you know, like I'll do the graffiti artists, I'll do like a graffiti section. And at the time, there was a website called Art Crimes, which is a really famous art graffiti site that people would send photos to this lady, and she would put them on there for like Arizona, for every state, for every country. They would post graffiti photos from like different people of like walls or trains or whatever. So I was like, yo, I'm gonna make something like that. Because in high school, like we would go to the internet cafe, like for like lunch, and like I would go to her website and like steal like graffiti styles and be like, oh, I want to do something like that. You know what I mean? Like colorways and stuff like that. So it kind of like was inspiration, right? And so I was like, I'm gonna do something like that for Arizona. And so I had like a b-boy section, and I had like a whole bunch of b-boys of pictures that we took at the church of all the b-boys of the Floor Assassins. And then I had a section for graffiti. So I had like some black book stuff from taking pictures of the black book, or, you know, pictures of trains or pictures of walls. And then I really didn't have like a rap section, I don't think, or like a DJ section, but I kind of just started off like that. And I want to say like a month or two in, I kind of forgot about it. I was just paying the bill, and I got an email. Thank God I put my fucking email on the website. I got an email from a guy, and he was like, "Hey, do you guys want to come out to Las Vegas next week?" And he's like, "Call me," you know. And I'm like, "Okay, well, like, what's up, dude?" By all means, I was 16 years old, right, at the time, and he was like, "Yo, do you want to come to Vegas? I need you to pick 3 dancers, and I want you to come to Vegas, and it'll be all expense paid. We need you guys to come dance." And I was like, "Well, I don't dance." And he's like, "Well, I need you to manage them, because I don't want to take care of these dudes." You know what I mean? So I had to have my mom like sign a contract to say that I can go to Vegas. I had a fake ID at the time.
Yeah.
So it wasn't too crazy. But we didn't know what to expect. So we got DHL'd a packet, right? Yeah. We all got cut a check to go out, like a per diem. Right. And he was like, "I'm gonna pay you a daily per diem to be out here. It's gonna be for a whole week. Nice. And all you're gonna do is just wear our clothes and walk around this clothing convention, right?" Yeah. At the time, I had no idea what the fuck he's talking about. Right. So we get to Vegas, we fly. We're like, "Dude, this is crazy." Like, they send us the tickets. And this was before the internet, like crazy. Like, you couldn't just get the tickets on your phone. Like, they sent you the tickets, you know what I mean? And so we got the tickets, and we're just like, okay, I guess, like, let's go, you know? And I remember like picking up everybody, and like my mom, I think, picked us all up, and we got dropped off at the airport. We shot to fucking Vegas. But when we get there, come to find out, it's like the biggest clothing convention in the world, right? And so the guy that hired us, he started a clothing company called Triple X Dungarees. And it was like kind of like a Adidas like velour suit hip hop knockoff, right? And they were owned by Lucky Brand Clothing. They were funded by Lucky Brand. It was like a urban streetwear like portion of their company, right? And then talking to the dude, come to find out, the dude that hired us just quit Janko, right? Wow. He's the guy that created the Janko jeans, the UFO jeans. Wow. And they did him dirty, so he's like, "Fuck you, I'm out." And then Lucky Brand was like, "We're gonna start this urban, like, kind of rave hip hop clothing. I want you to come over here, and we'll cut you this money, and you could do it." You know what I mean? And so he was like, "I need b-boys. I need people that are dancing. Come over here and battle the Janko dudes." So like, we were there just to really fuck with Janko, right? You know what I mean? And so it was funny because it was like a rivalry the whole time. And they would like, yo, he would be like, yo, go to the, I would like hold a boombox, put on a tape. Of course, it'd be like a Z-Trip tape or something like a B-Boy mix. And they would just dance and shit. But that turned into like just us going tons of places. Like I went with Z-Trip to Miami for the Pro-Am, which was the DMCs were Craze first one, the first DMCs. And we just kept going to all we would go to LA a lot to check out the stuff they're working on. I brought Mac out there, I brought Caper out there. They did a lot of t-shirt designs. Lalo did like their booth design for the ASR show, the Magic Show. And in the Magic Show, if you don't know what the Magic Show is, man, like at that time, there was no restrictions, right? So like you would be sitting at the Magic Show, like just chilling at the booth, right? And like Russell Simmons would walk by, E40 would walk by, the whole Wu-Tang would walk by, Big Pun. Like it was everybody and anybody like that were like trying to do a clothing line at the time, like Just Blaze, like it was just everything. And I mean also too, like you're right next to like Polo and like, you know, Ralph Lauren or like Miyoshi and just like all these weird 555 Soul and like Echo at the time, like when Mark Echo first started, you know what I mean? And it was just crazy because you're just shaking hands and talking to all these people, and you're just probably like starstruck, like yo, like what the fuck, like that's Russell Simmons, like yo, that's crazy. And you know, like I think that's like one of my biggest regrets too is like not taking enough pictures, not getting enough video. I have some, but like in the process of it, I was just so like there in the moment. And I remember like we went to like my boy Mo, he's from Big Five. At the time, he would always get us into VIP parties. And I think one of the craziest VIP parties was at the Liberace Mansion. It was hosted by Malik Yobin from New York Undercover. Tony Touch was DJing. Lord Tariq and Peter Guns were rapping. And Mike Tyson was there, right? And it was sponsored by Remy Martin. So it was full open bar Remy Martin. And people were so trash, fucking shit up in that house. It was crazy. It was a crazy night. And then like somebody hit me up the first time I went out. And this is where it gets into promotion. As I was out at the Magic Show, a guy had came up to me and he said, hey, I work for this label. I'm gonna send you some stuff when you get back to Phoenix. And I said, okay, cool. Like what are you doing? He's like, we're working on an album, you know, like I'll send you some promo stuff. If you can, just give it out to your friends. Like you give it out to your people, like at the hip hop shows or whatever. Right. It's all right. And so I got home, I gave my address, I got home, and he sent me a package. It was from Rap-A-Lot, right? Nice. And I opened it up and it's like just a whole bunch of records, like singles, and like these big ass stickers that were like, I mean, I think they're like 24 inches. They were huge. Right. And it was a big ass penny that said do or die on it. And it was Po Pimp, right? Right. And so I was like, yo, this is crazy. Like I never heard, like I wasn't really, I didn't know too much about like Texas rap or anything at the time. You know what I mean? And I was just listening to it like, yo, this is dope, right? And then I think one of the songs they had was with the Twista on there, was with Twista on there. Right. And I was like, yo, this is really dope. And so we gave it out, we handed it out, and then he goes, dude, you know you can get paid to do this shit, right? Yeah. And I'm like, well, what do you guys got going on? You know what I mean? And he's like, well, let me send you some more stuff, and I'll give you like $100, maybe $200 like a month, and you send us some pictures of you giving it out. And I was like, okay. So I started doing that, right? I started going to like little hip hop jams, handing stuff out, handing stickers out, putting posters up or whatever. And then that's when I met Daze. Wow. And I forget how it happened. I want to say that I went to like Warehouse and I handed him some stuff that I got from Rap-A-Lot. Okay. And he was like, oh, I work for Tommy Boy. Wow. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, I have a street team. You know, I work for Tommy Boy. And at the time, I think he was just only working for Tommy Boy. Yeah. And so I was like, okay. You know, like, he was like, well, why don't we just do this shit together? We'll just go to spots together all the time. Yeah. So, all right. And he's like, well, I'll hit you when I got to work. And so we started chopping it up. And he would come pick me up in his little Saturn. And we would hit the streets, man. Like, but he was getting paid good from Tommy Boy. Yeah. So at the time he was like, yo, like, let's start shopping more labels. Like, I'm gonna put together this proposal saying what we're doing so far, how much we want, and we'll start shopping the labels. And he's like, we could take more, like, we're going out all these places, like, we could take tons of shit. So I'm like, all right, let's do it. And so I think the second label that we got was, I want to say it was Arista. But we went through a lot of labels at that time, man. We went through Arista, Tommy Boy, Ruck. Well, I got Ruckus. So it was Priority, Def Jam, Columbia. Just, dude, it was pretty much all of them, but all of them, like, were off and on, right? And at that time, if people don't know, there was a budget for street teams, right? And so and it was regional. So, like, they had a regional rep that was the street team rep for, like, West Coast or East Coast. And they had a budget. And so street team work meant, like, guerrilla, like, marketing, where we would hit the streets, we would hand out flyers, we would put up posters on abandoned buildings, on poles, whatever. And then we did retail. So we would go to all the stores, Tower Records, Warehouse, Sam Goody, you know, all the spots, even like the mom and pops, and we would put up posters, we would do displays. And I learned how to do displays from Mark because Mark was at the warehouse, and so he was doing them already. And so at night, we would hit the streets. During the day, we'd hit the retail, right? And then during the day too, like on our days off, we would hit radio. So we would go to all the stations and hit all the DJs off with all the new singles. We'd hit the record pools off. At the time, there was Desert West Record Pool, I think at the time. And we would go hit them off with singles or full lengths and stuff like that we had. And that was dope. Like, it was cool because I started to, like, I kind of stopped DJing. I stopped doing graphics at that time. I think I was doing a little bit of graphics on the side, but I was making good money, you know, and like, and we were still going out of state doing like the clothing thing for a minute. So, it just got out of hand for the most part. And we were doing so much, like, we were at every show, every rave. And then, like, TMC started hitting us up. That's when Arlo came in, right? Arlo was doing some stuff with Days before I started doing stuff with Days, or right around the same time. And he was like, yeah, he's one of my guys, you know, like, you'll work with him a lot. And at the time, I'm like, yo, I'm not fucking with Arlo. He's crazy, bro. Like, this dude is nuts, you know what I mean? And, like, every time we went somewhere, he was just wild, you know what I mean? And he was just like, man, you got to get along with him, bro. Like, trust me, he's a good dude. And I'm like, it's not that I don't get along with the dude. It's just he's crazy. Like, he's gonna get us in trouble. You know what I mean? And so after a while, it took a while, and he grew on me, man. And like, me and that dude, like, we, you know, it was like we were brothers, bro. And like, and we did a lot of shit together. We did a lot of shows together. And it was kind of like a small rivalry, like our whole career for the most part, of like, I was doing graphics, he started doing graphics. I was doing marketing, he was doing marketing. He was, you know, like, I was doing some label shit. I started a label with these dudes called Chop Shop. It was like the Big Five, yeah. And like Lou Cypher, Big Mo, Ajax. And it was called Chop Shop Records. And then he started like the Society of the Invisibles. And so it was like, you know, it was always like this little, you know, back and forth. And and then he would bring labels. He would try to get labels on. I think he might have brought on Def Jam, if I'm not mistaken. And one of our biggest labels that kept us like money, like in our pockets, was Priority, because they did so much distribution, and Universal. And like, Priority was big because, I mean, Priority at the time, I mean, dude, it was all West Coast, right? So yeah, and then Master P came along, and we did all the Master P albums, all the No Limit shit, you know. And then at the time too, like, I mean, dude, there's so many stories about just that, right? But yeah, we went, it was wild, bro. Like, we went to a lot of shows, and we did a lot of big albums, and we got some credit for some stuff. Unfortunately, being from Arizona, like, we didn't get the credit that we actually deserved. And a lot of like the other states, like LA, and, you know, like the bigger states, Texas, like New York and stuff, they sent like if a record went gold or if it went platinum, they sent you a plaque. They did the Billboard Awards here one year, and I don't quote me on what year, but I don't remember. But that year, all my reps hit me and said, "Yo, I need you guys to go hard on all the albums." And this is the time like Terror Squad was coming out with the album, Big Pun was Capital Punishment, it was out. I think Fat Joe's album was out.
And that was under Loud and Priority.
Loud and Priority, right. And so, and then Nori.
Yeah.
That's when Nori broke away. Well, I think that's when Capone.
Records, right?
Yeah, that was. Well, Nori was on Penalty, but before that he was on Tommy Boy.
That's right. Yeah.
And like Defari and like that. You know what I mean? Which is one of my favorite albums. Like the Defari albums were my favorites. So at that time we went crazy and we like put up posters on the freeways, like on the overpasses. We did all kind of fucked up shit like that we probably shouldn't have did. You know what I mean? But it would be like Big Pun, Fat Joe, Nori. You know what I mean? And so we finally we did so good on the Nori album. They said that we sold the most records for Nori out of every state here in Phoenix, right? So they sent us a fucking plaque, finally, right? So I still have that plaque to this day. They sent us like a Warren G plaque that was like I forget which album it was, but Days lost it in a move. But I still have the Nori plaque, which is still like to this day like probably the best thing ever. You know what I mean? Because that's like really the only thing I have to remember that shit by. But during the time, you know, meeting all the DJs, meeting all the promoters, all the club promoters, all the people, going to all the clubs every single night, like from Fashion to Tricky T, M2, you know, like just servicing them the records all the time. And then being like, yo, dude, these dudes are making a lot of fucking money DJing. Like, how do I do that, you know? And I'm like, if all else fails, I might start DJing again, like going crazy, you know? And I was just always practicing at the house and shit, but I was never serious. And of course, every time I service records to people, I service myself. You know what I mean? And then at the same time of going out there, I started working for Rap Pages magazine too, as a side thing. And they would send me, I think 10 to 15 boxes of magazines a month. And just to give out for free. So we would put stacks everywhere because they were trying to take out the source, you know what I mean? Because it was just a direct competition, which is cool because I still talk to Manny to this day, but they shut down. It was right after like the street team shit shut down. And the reason why the street team like pretty much got abolished was because of Napster and like the digital sales of records. There was no more money. There's nobody making any money off of physical sales anymore. And then all the record labels started getting busted for payola at the radio stations. And I mean, we were there for that. You know what I mean? Like we were there like taking a lot of people out to lunch and buying shoes for people and jackets and shit. You know what I mean? But I mean, at the time, like it was cool because we met so many artists. Like when artists came in, we were responsible for them. We put an itinerary together for them when they were in town, and we took them to stores to do in-stores. We took them to the radio to do radio, and then if we can get a promoter to put them on at a night, at a club night, to do a performance, they would do a performance. Unfortunately, we never took any money from that, but yeah, that's what it was. But one of the most memorable moments, I think, with promotion, other than just meeting a ton of fucking artists and like just how adrenaline pumping it was all the time, 24/7. I was working for Priority at the time, and my boss's name was Bigga B. And he came out with Badass. Badass was Snoop Dogg's little nephew, right? So Snoop was like, yo, and I had just met Snoop for the first time probably like 2 or 3 weeks before that. Me and Days, like I have a picture of me and Days, and we're out in front of Old Power, and that's when Snoop got signed to No Limit. Okay. So he's like, "Yo, take care of my little nephew. He's gonna be out here, blah blah." So he came out for a whole week, which is pretty rare, and we just did mad in stores, mad performances, radio interviews, all kind of stuff, and they stayed right here over on next to the Clarendon, right on 3rd and Osborne. And so we would just party, man. Like every night we went to Zazoo's, we went to Jets and Sticks. And then after like Zazoo's, they had a performance at Zazoo's. And then after we went to the Post 66, right? And this was on Van Buren. This shit is hood, bro. Like if you weren't there at that time, bro, like I was like the only white boy in that motherfucker, bro. Like straight up, like they had like ass shaking contests where they just got butt naked, and it was like J.U. Ice DJing, and it was Derek Ware, Urban AZ at the time was Diamond Entertainment doing the events, and it was crazy because anytime we showed up, like we hit the cars and it sucked because it was always fights in the fucking all this shit. Anyways, we got to the AmVets that night, and we partied all night in the VIP, right? And then we got home and we dropped Big off with some chick, and his assistant took me home. I wasn't driving at the time. We were fucked up. Took me home, and I woke up to a phone call the next morning, right? The phone call was like, yo, what the fuck did you guys do last night? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, yo, like, where did you guys go? And we went to the club, we did a performance, and then we went to the after party till like 5 in the morning, and we partied, you know what I mean? I was like, that's what we've been doing all week, bro. You know what I mean? And he's like, yo, you need to get to the hotel. I'm like, okay, blah, blah. I fucking rush over to the hotel. Bigga died of a heart attack in the hotel room that night, right? And the couple days before that, he was like, yo, man, you got to come out to LA. And he was like, yo, you're killing it out here. You're doing a really good job. You've been working for us for a while. Like, you need to start coming out to LA more and start getting in, like, out here. And I said, okay, like, for sure. And he's like, I got this event. It's called, it's like the Unity Fest, right? And he was in charge of the Unity Fest, which is a lot of, like, the Alcoholics, Tash, like, all those dudes were that was like their springboard into, like, getting signed under the labels, right? And I had no idea, like, what it was. I'd never been. I just heard about it, right? And he's like, yo, you got to come out to one of my events. This is my shit, And so, it was kind of a weird situation because they were like, yo, what happened last night? Like, what went down? And like, yo, we just party, bro. Like, dude was a big dude. He had a heart attack, you know what I mean? So we ended up getting assigned a new dude. His name was Big West, which I still talk to this day as well. Really good dude. He still manages, like, Ice Cube and a lot of people still. But after a couple of years, I finally learned, like, they did a full-on, like 2 or 3 page magazine thing on Bigga and, like, all the stuff that he contributed to, like, hip hop, which was unbelievable. It was so dope. So really good dude. But it was a hard hit because it was like, yo, like, this is where we're at. This is what we're doing. We're partying every fucking night. We're turning up. Like, at the time we were meeting MC8, Mac 10. Anytime people came in town, like, yo, let's get fucked up. Let's smoke, let's drink, whatever. And I was still young, man. Like, I wasn't even 21 yet, And so I was, like, in Vegas and I was out here. We're just doing, and, like, at the time, like, no security sweated us because we would show up to the club with, like, full-length CDs or full-length records or whatever and be like, here, bro. And they're like, come on in. You know what I mean? Like, they wouldn't say shit, So that was that. And from all that, like, I started, like, when it all fell off pretty much for the most part is when Napster came out and the MP3s. So after all that stuff, currently, like, after everything, from learning about marketing, graphics, DJing, music industry, everything, I decided to start DJing again, and I started playing a lot of clubs, promoting a lot of parties, doing a lot of designs for a lot of promoters out here. I've done a lot of designs for, I think, like, man, I hate to, like, say that that's what I am, but, like, I've done a lot of flyers, bro. Like, I think I've done a good, probably up towards about 5,000 flyers, right? And, like, and I don't think anybody can say that, right? For Phoenix, you know what I mean? And I started getting into, like, the electro scene. Like, there used to be a bar called Camus at the Clarendon. And then Ohm Lounge, we started doing like electro hip hop nights. That's kind of when I started getting into like early EDM, like Daft Punk and stuff like that. And so it was like, yo, I want to play with just everything. I don't want to just play hip hop. I don't want to be stuck to like just one genre. Like, you know, the Blunt Club was dope and all this other stuff. But then I started getting into like a lot of EDM stuff. That's when it just started to blossom a little bit. And we were doing shows. We were doing after parties. And it was crazy. It was a crazy time. It was a lot of drugs. It was a lot of drinking, a lot of debauchery. But it was fun, man. Like that's when I really punched in to start DJing a lot more, right? And as DJing, it's like, yo, well, we should do this night. Well, we should do this night here. We should do this night there, and let's start a night here. And then, like at the time, I was doing flyers for like Bonduce, for Coach and Willie's, and I was doing stuff for Carambas. They had a gay night called like a Latin gay night called Carnival, and I did like a lot of their big flyers, like, and those were like fold out flyers, and like they went in, you know what I mean? And you know, like we were doing stuff for After 9, right? We were doing stuff with them. Like, they were doing stuff at Firebird, then they started doing it at Jomex, that Speed World, and like we were just doing a ton of shit. Me and Ali, obviously, like ever since we met, like that was my right hand dude all the time. You know what I mean? So every time you seen Ali, I was probably there. If every time you see me, Ali was there, right? But that all blossomed into like just doing more promotion and doing more nights. And I kind of just stayed at that, man. Like I was making good money. I was working at Monarch, Barsmith, doing nights. I mean, shit, I was at Barsmith for like 10 years, right? And I was doing all their flyers for Solstice and shit. But at the time, I was hanging out with my old school homies, you know, Caper and Lalo, and they were living at my friend Adi's house. I didn't know Adi that well, and he started. He was wild. We used to do after parties at his house, and they ended up like we did a lot of after parties after Ohm Lounge for a party foul at that time at his house, and we he was an artist, but he kind of just liked to have fun, and he did like body work and a whole bunch of other stuff, and we did some work together, and we became like really, really good friends. And you know, fast forward maybe like 4 or 5 years of me DJing and doing a lot of parties, he was like, "Hey man, I'm gonna go buy arcades," and I was like, "Why?" You know, and he's like, "I'm gonna start going buying all old arcade like, and like, what the fuck? What's the reason for that?" He's like, "I like arcades. Like we should redo them. Like I want to redo them." And like he was like, "I do cars. I like bondo cars. I could bondo arcade machines and like paint them and make them look dope." I'm like, "Okay, dude," you know. And so he started just using all of his money to travel like to Vegas or to LA and all these places to go grab old cabinets from like laundromats, from backyards, just all kind of shit. And he knew nothing about like redoing them, redoing the buttons and the screens, the CRTs, and just the motherboards and all that shit, right? And he started just learning it, bro. He learned all of it. And I want to say he bought like 20 games in the beginning. And he revamped all of them. And he said, "You know what? I want to throw an art show." I was like, "Okay, like, what do you mean? Like, what kind of art show?" He's like, "An arcade art show." I'm like, "All right." And then he's like, "Yo, do you want to do one?" And I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "Well, how do you want to do it?" So he's like, "I'm going to give one to Mac. I'm going to give one to Lalo. I'm going to give one to Caper. I'm going to give one to all of our homies, right? To do an arcade." And I mean, there's a ton of more artists, right, that did them. So he let everybody have them at their house, literally delivered them to the house for, 3 months or something like that, and then went and picked them all up. Yeah. And I designed a S&K cabinet that was like a multi-cade that had over 100 games on it, which is really kind of like better than a lot of the other games because you could play 100 games on it with 1 quarter. So he's like, "Yo, I want to do this art show." So I did the flyer for this. It was the first annual Artcade show. And we did it at, it was next to Tonatera. It was another spot that was like an art gallery that was over there. I forget, it was called Parasol, I think it was at the time, Parasol or something like that. But we didn't expect shit, right? We did the show. We put it off flyers. They announced it in the New Times, whatever. It sold out 2 nights in a row. The main night was about 900 people, and you couldn't get in. People were playing games. We had a DJ. It was dope. And I was like, this is crazy, bro. Like, how do we do, like, what? You know what I mean? Like, he's like, bro, I want to do something with this. And I was like, okay. And then a couple weeks later, the Phoenix Contemporary Art Museum hit us up right here. They said, we want to give you a room at the museum for a month and bring all the arcade games in and just put them on free play. Okay. So we did it. They did like an opening for it. A bunch of people showed up. We got a lot of press on it. It was dope. A lot of kids. It was really cool. They showcased a lot of the artists, whatever. We finished that show and they hit us up and said, hey, just so you know, out of all the shows that we've done at the museum, yours had the most highest traffic that we've ever done than any other artist show. And we're like, what does that mean? They're like, yo, like, it just had the most traffic in that room for some reason. Because they had a dude like with a clicker, and they had like a little thing on the door, I guess, that clicked if he wasn't there. And I'm like, and so many people just came to see it, right? So I'm like, yo, that's crazy. And then so he heard about like in New York and I think in LA and Frisco, that there was these barcades, right? So it took a while, man. Like, it was, not to get into like full detail, but it took a while to go back and forth to try to find investors and people that really wanted to do it, and to do the bar. And finally, Audie, he got it. He got the investor. He got somebody to put in as a partner for him, and he designed the whole shit, man. Like, he came up with all the idea. He wanted it to look a certain way. You know, he had all the artists come in and do graffiti on all the walls, all of our homies, you know what I mean? Like, he brought in the crew, you know what I mean? Like, all of our friends. And so at the beginning, I was just like, this is crazy, bro. You know, like, I still kind of didn't believe like this was going to go too far. And then I started DJing there, and then he was like, dude, I need you to help out with marketing. I need you to help out with promotion. I know you know how to do this shit. You've been doing it your whole life. Like, let's do this. And I was okay. And I was still DJing there, but he had me start doing all the marketing and promotion. So I technically been there since day one, even before it started. And I mean, now we're like 7 years in.
This is Cobra, right?
Cobra, yeah. Cobra Arcade Bar. And then the first year went pretty good. A year and a half in, we opened up another one in Tucson, which is Cobra Tucson. It's on Scott and Congress in Tucson. And then like 2 years later after that, we opened up Stardust and Ziggy's. Okay. And then during the pandemic, we opened up High Score next to Cobra. Nice. So now we have 5 spots, and he just opened up another spot called Liars Club right here at the Old Deli next to the Valley Bar. But yeah, so I do all the marketing, promotion, a lot of the branding, promotion, booking, a little bit of everything, videos, all that stuff. And I've been doing that for like the last 7 years. Yeah, I don't think that I'm that. I don't know, man. I mean, I guess it feels good, right? It feels good to I can look back at all this stuff and say that I did it, right? And I could look back and to say that I helped a lot of people to get started. And it's always a good feeling to hear somebody that says like, man, I remember coming to your house and picking up like free promos, or when you were DJing, seeing you at a show, or, you know, I used to take a lot of people around with me, man, like that are just working 9-to-5 jobs now, and that are like, yo, man, I had the best time of my life is when you took me to the show and we were on stage with Redman and Method Man, or, you know, these people or those people, you know what I mean? Like, shit like that, that makes me feel good. You know what I mean? Like, that's what gives me my solidity, you know what I mean? And it makes me humble. It makes me feel good about all that. And I mean, like, you know, from DJing big shows, opening up for big artists like Just Blaze and like Questlove and Shaq, and like just tons of shows that I've done, and people that I've worked with, like, that's the humbling thing. And that's what makes me happy, man. Like, that's what I could look back at, and like even this, interview, right? I could look back and show my daughter, like this is what I did. You know what I mean? That's who I was, and I mean I still am. So it is what it is. Yo, I'm MeanMugg, aka Biggie, aka Sean, and that was my 5.
And there you have it. Yo, shout out to my brother MeanMugg, aka Biggie. That's my dog right there, man. And I mean, we were running out of film for this joint. You know what I'm saying? Like, he has so many stories, and it's like I feel like we were just barely like cracking the surface. You know what I'm saying? I told him he needs to start a podcast, do something, man, because there's just so much history that he has, from everything he's witnessed in the scene out here through all these years. And just a real good dude, man. Real good dude. And, it was such an honor to have him on the show today. So make sure you guys are following him on social media. And shout out to my brother Jimmy Nelson on the camera. Make sure you guys subscribe to that YouTube channel. Tell a friend to tell a friend. The numbers are going up, but who's checking, right? All right. Well, this was definitely one for the books. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Until next time, stay tuned, stay blessed, stay healthy, and just give me 5, y'all.
Everything you get, you got